Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning as we want to share some really important work that we're going to do here in 2022. My name is Candace Moore. I'm the Chief Equity Officer here in the Office of Equity and Racial Justice here in the Mayor's Office. And I see we have a good number of folks joining us. So if you haven't already, feel free to drop your name and your neighborhood so other folks can kind of see who's in the virtual room and what hood we represent in our great city of Chicago. I am really excited today to take some time to share this important work with all of you, with our community that has been supporting the work of the office, has been connecting in community, and who might just be curious to kind of see what's up and what's going on. Today, we want to take you through our plans for a year of healing 2022. This flows from our work around Together We Heal. And today we're going to do two main things. One, I'm going to take some time just to kind of walk you through the journey that we've been on and where we're going in this year. And then I am so grateful to have a really great panel of partners that I have been able to learn from, to dream with, and to build with, who will share some of the perspectives of their work and our work together in hopes that it inspires us as we all sort of move forward in this year. And so with that, if I have someone helping me with the slides, so I'll be saying next slide as we go along. All right, for those who know us, you've probably heard me say this a bunch of times. For some folks who are still getting to know the office a little bit more, I always like to start with the what do we do? Because this Office of Equity and Racial Justice is new. This is the first time my role has existed, and this is the first time this office has been set up. And so the Office of Equity and Racial Justice seeks to advance institutional change that results in equitable transformation of how we do business across the city of Chicago enterprise. I like to simply say, we like to support the city in thinking about how we build equity into how we do business. And I say that really intentionally because how we do business covers service delivery, resource distribution, policy creation, and decision-making. How we do business is not just a program, it's not just an initiative, but it is really thinking about what we do every day, how we show up, and how do we build policies and practices that begin to change equity as both a process and an outcome. I often use it of sort of working out. So there's no finish line when it comes to advancing racial equity. We're not racing to some particular endpoint where we can rest and say it's done and get a blue ribbon. But instead, we need to think about this as a workout and getting healthy. We have to strengthen the muscle for equity, and we want that muscle to be strong enough to help us build the city that we believe can happen, a more equitable Chicago. Next slide. The other thing I will invite folks to do is if you have any questions along the way, because I'll be sharing quite a lot of information, if you go ahead and put it in the Q&A chat, then at the end, I'll work through the different questions. So if you have any questions as we go along, please put it in the Q&A chat. So the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, as we've thought about what is this change work that we think needs to happen, we've really been focused around three pillars. One is one in relationship to community. So supporting community healing, particularly for us as it relates to community and government. We recognize that if we want to build a more equitable city, it is going to require us to engage in a different way. And also show up and support our communities in a different way. So what is that going to look like? What are the policies, the practices, the resources that are needed to do that work? We also want to build restorative tools and partnerships. We have to think about what will it take to actually do the work. The same tools and strategies may not always work to what we want to build. So how can we bring in new tools like the health and racial equity impact assessment? How do we take language and bring it into our work around equity that really supports us in building the kind of tools and partnerships that are needed to lead to transformation, which is our third pillar. We want to own institutional transformation. We're not doing this as just an exercise. The results of what we want to do is to actually change how our organization, in this case, city government, works. And today, what we'll really be focusing on as we talk about the Year of Healing is our support for community healing, but really how that is not just stuck in one pillar, but how the themes around building restorative tools and partnerships and owning institutional transformation are fundamentally a part of our strategy. I want to start here because as many of you know, at the end of last year, we lost a really powerful voice in Bell Hooks. And I shouldn't say we lost her voice because what I have been in reflection of since her passing is how powerful her words were then and still are, and how they really personally for me have kind of carried me at different points in my life. And so as I was reflecting when she passed and reading what different folks have written about her, but also returning to some of the quotes and the writings in her works, this particular quote found me. And it simply says, "Rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion." And that's from her book, All About Love. And it struck me because of the work that we've been doing around Together We Heal. Together We Heal is rooted out of the moment that we were all going through as we were grappling with the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, the racial reckoning that was happening across our city and our country. And I'll speak from my personal experience, as I was personally experiencing that, both as a city official, but also as a human being in this world, a Black woman human being in this world. As for everyone, it was deeply overwhelming. And so trying to think about what to do, what was your role, recognizing that in many ways our roles needed to shift. We needed to think about how we could show up for our communities in any way that was available to us. I got a lot of power as I was listening to community members actually talk. I would find myself on multiple calls just asking people, what are you doing? What do you need? How can we support you? And this conversation around healing just kept coming up. Folks were doing healing work in their communities. So finding places and spaces to bring folks together to process what was going on, to support one another so that folks can have the power or connect to the power in community to face the road ahead another day, to vision and plan for what should be. And so those conversations just got me thinking about, so what's our role in government? What could be my role? What could be the role of this office? Because this theme around healing is so connected to the kind of transformation that we want to see, that it must be rooted in a fundamental belief of healing. And even as imperfect as our moment is, even with all of the constraints around us, there is this opportunity to build with one another. Healing can't happen in a silo, in one institution, in one office, with one person, or in one organization. There is power in what is happening in our collective, and we have an opportunity to try something. So I want to share with you a little bit of what we try to do with Together We Heal, and then how that has built into the work that we are really excited to move for 2022. So in response to this sort of community feedback, this listening, this hearing, these conversations that I was a part of, OERJ launched what we call the Together We Heal initiative in November of 2020. And the goal was not to tell people how to heal, but it was very clear to me that there was a lot going on, a lot of really powerful work that not everyone knew about. So many people talked about how they felt they were doing the work in isolation. And so we wanted to try to create some opportunity for us to come together and at least see each other in the work. And then with that belief that if we could see one another, we can begin to vision and build towards a path forward. So we, in November, asked Chicagoans to do 3 things. We asked them to commit, making a public commitment to racial healing. To join ongoing efforts. Chicago's really proud to have the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation work connected to the National Day of Racial Healing and the work that Dr. Gail Christopher has done. So there was rich resources for us to connect to around healing. We asked folks to host their own event in their community. So a lot of folks were already doing this. There were some really great resources coming out from particularly the state of Illinois at the time in partnership with the Trust. And we asked people to host their own events. We also asked people to learn, to take this moment to learn about what was going on, to read, to connect to resources. We built a resource kit. So in that work, we were really excited to see how folks showed up. You want to go to the next slide? We made those asks, and community responded, right? Nearly 10,000 people across the city of Chicago participated in just shy of 200 healing events in just 3 months. And it was funny because everybody was like, this is not enough time, Candace, we need more time, et cetera. But in just 3 months, over 200 events were recorded on this healing map that we created that represented the participation of over 10,000 Chicagoans. And they did everything from promote dialogue, encourage collaboration, facilitate learning, and seed connection. And as you can see in this map, it really was from widespread. It wasn't just concentrated in one part of the city. We were also lucky to partner with Public Narrative. And because there was a need to also, yes, we were having a spread and there were all these conversations going on, but how could we invite people into certain conversations? And so we, in partnership with Public Narrative, led a Candid Conversation series. We had a series with the healers, so people who were doing healing work from different disciplines, with the faith leaders from different faiths talking about how their work around healing was happening. With the neighbors, we were able to spotlight Tanika Johnson's work around the folded map. And with the storytellers, folks who lead a narrative change in their work. And after 3 months, we really came together in what I call a reflection, our Together We Heal Summit. It featured 14 different speakers, including a candid conversation between the mayor and the governor, talking about from their experience, what they were seeing, just a peek in how they were thinking and processing the moment, as well as the team working on monuments and memorials, which was and still is a really big conversation for our city, talking about how they're thinking about and trying to create a path forward for us as a city. And then a number of different partners, including the state, and the investments that they were making around healing, Chicago Public Schools and how they were supporting young people, Public Narrative, and one of our community leads that have been working with us, just all sharing how they were coming to the work of healing and what it meant and the impact that they were having. But what was really important for us coming out of the summit was to make sure that this wasn't just a good conversation or just a moment, right? Not a program, not just initiative. So how can we build two things to carry us forward? And we focused on one, an equity statement of principles, and two, beginning to build an outline for a year of healing. So for the equity statement of principles, what was important about this is that we wanted to build a shared definition of equity that could really guide our work. We see this as a tool that continues to support, especially the work inside government. So many of the different strategies that we might use, whether they be policy making, whether they be working with a community coalition and trying to build a consensus on what we mean by equity, whether it comes to evaluating decisions and holding it accountable to this definition of equity. Key and core to our definition is this idea that equity is both a process and an outcome. We care about the outcome. We care about fair and just results for folks, but we also care how we get there. We want to make sure that that process is something that community is a part of, that those most impacted help build and help drive how we get there and get to that outcome. And so the equity statement of principle is a tool that we continue to use in our work. For this year of healing, we heard that people wanted cross-neighborhood dialogue and connection. They wanted public events to celebrate culture, and they wanted the city's commitment to institutional change. And in the next slide, you can see kind of how some of that feedback laid out. So there were any number of different areas that folks could sort of lift up. And we saw that there were a lot of ways in which people wanted to activate. So they wanted to be a part of something, but they also wanted institutional change and institutional process. So these are the things that drove us this entire experience. And so why I'm sharing this is I want you to understand what the journey has been to build finally for this year of 2022, the year of healing. So I am really excited. I'm so proud of all of our partners. I'm so proud of our team, because now in 2022, we are ready to present this year of healing. And our goals for the year of healing is not to heal the city of Chicago in 2022 by year end, although I'd love to see that happen. I do recognize that this work is much more long-term than that. But instead, that we wanted to have a real exploration of what strategies, what tools can we use as a city to really begin to build healing into how we do business. So we have designed a framework, which I will share, that's meant to help guide and shape some of the engagement that we do and to inspire others throughout the year. We as a city are committing to modeling that framework in 5 city initiatives, and we will share what we learn as we explore those models. We are also going to be building capacity. We recognize that to do this work, that we have to invest our time and our resources in order to make it happen. And at the end, we want to make sure that we capture these learnings and make and name how we will use them moving forward. And so at the end of the year, we want to release a report from what we learned. So digging a little deeper, the Year of Healing framework, I think many of you who have gotten a chance to work with us closely have already sort of gotten a sense of this, but we will be centering around 3 pillars throughout the year. The first is reflecting on our past. This is going to be an opportunity for us to acknowledge history, recognize and explore how history shapes who we are today, can inform us for how we build, but also can teach us what to avoid or what we want to do differently. And so having honest conversations about our history, we feel is a foundation to this work. We want to reclaim our present. Another piece that's really important is we want to talk about history, but we want to make sure that history helps us define and shape what our present engagements will look like. How will we lead this work? What will be the principles in which we move forward? What are going to be our rules of engagement so that we can build and get to ultimately this third pillar, which is reimagining our future. The actual planning, the working on what will be different, whether that be in the policy space, culture space, or building out in the built environment. A good example is a project we've already executed in partnership with one of my favorite people, Dilla. I think many people have gotten a chance to know him, and if you don't, I'm sure you will want to after hearing from him. He is going to join us for the panel. But Dilla and I were able to get together and put together this project called We Built Chicago, which the goal was to tell the story of Chicago's racial history, which is really dynamic. All of our communities have built and have shaped the city. And in our stories is a story of both challenge and resilience and triumph. And I think Dilla does such a beautiful job of helping us tell these stories. And so all of them have been shared on social media. We shared them at the end of last year, but they all now sit on our Together We Heal website. And so you can go to them now if you haven't got a chance to see them, not right this second, but after the panel. Also, I would love to see how people might want to use them in some of their different bodies of work. You heard me mention that commitment to model the Year of Healing framework into 5 initiatives and really think about how the framework has shown up or can show up in that work. And so here are the 5 initiatives: Monuments Memorial, which a lot of that work has happened. So this is us looking at how does this framework show up and how some of the work has happened. ETOD, Equitable Transit-Oriented Development. Community wealth building, which is work we're leading out of our office around thinking about shared, thinking about democratic ownership and how wealth can be shared amongst the community. As many of you know, the city is leading a community safety coordination center. So working there to really think about how culture impacts our communities around safety. And then some policy work around extreme heat, especially if many of you have seen the video Cooked. There's work that the city is doing to really think about how do we respond in some of these climate changes. Build capacity. We're going to be thinking about building capacity on 2 different fronts. One is for government, so continuing our work around training, thinking about the tools that we need to build out in our work. You heard me talk about the equity statement of principles. I think many of you have gotten to see when we launched the equity and racial justice learning cohorts, but these are intensive training opportunities that we are building with departments to really give them the tools and the skill that they need to think and build equity into their work. And at the end, we want all departments to have a racial equity action plan of how they are going to commit to building equity within their departments. Next slide. The other thing, I'm super excited to be in partnership with the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, DCAS, on is investing in our communities. So through the Chicago Recovery Plan, we are going to be able to invest $5 million in creative placekeeping grants. So we will be putting out a creative placekeeping grant RFP in the spring of 2022 to invest in the work that communities are doing to build healing, and to do that in partnership with and to do that with artists. So using artists to help lead some of the projects that we see out in communities, whether those be story circles, murals, sculptures, walking or bike tours, pop-up galleries, street festivals, and reimagining of places and spaces. So we're super excited about this. More details to come in the spring, but I'm definitely looking forward to this investment. And then last but not least, the most exciting thing is a report, of course. No, but I do think it's really important that as we do all of these things throughout the year, that we are beginning to set the lessons learned for how we will move forward, because we recognize, as I said before, that healing is not going to happen by year end in any way, stretch, in any form, or in any sort of completion. And so what will be important through this is that we are taking and being intentional about what we learned and then what we will carry with us moving forward. We will do some things great, and in some places we will make mistakes or do things that we wish we would have done differently. This is about being intentional about that and naming and carrying forward what we want to see. And as you can see, these are some of the questions that we will hold as we think about drafting that report. So last but not least on this part, before we get to the panel and you get to hear from some of our partners, is how can you get involved? So as we're saying across the Chicago Recovery Plan is that we want communities right now to start getting prepared. So if you like really jumped out at that, $5 million for placekeeping, I got 10 different ideas right now. Great. Start thinking about your ideas, start thinking about the work that you would do, start thinking about the partners, and start getting prepared for being able to apply for those funds. We really want to see really great projects invested in. There are a number of resources that the city is doing to try to help prepare communities. Folks can go to chi.gov/recovery and see some of those resources, as well as some of the different funding opportunities that are available right now. But then that's another place where we'll be updating as we go along. In the fall of 2022, we're going to do some sort of gathering. We don't know what COVID is going to be doing, so it may be virtual. I would love if it can have an in-person component to it, but in some way, shape, or form, we're going to find a time to connect and really reflect on the work that has been done at that point in preparation for the report. And then, you don't need me to direct everything. So I will say, I hope this work inspires you to think about what resources and what agency you have in your space and come up with ideas where you can live into the framework of reflect on our past, reclaim our present, reimagine our future. So I encourage folks to think about how you can be in alignment with this, connect to us on social media to share the work that you are doing, but we would love if you are activating your own spaces throughout the year as well. And so with that, I want to make sure we have time. Continue. I see folks, there are some questions in the chat. We'll get to them all the way at the end. But right now, I want to bring some other voices into this conversation, some really dynamic voices that I feel so privileged to be able to partner with. We have Dilla, who I talked about a little bit earlier, who is the urban historian who does so much great work on TikTok. We have José Rico from TRHT Chicago. I talked about their work a little bit earlier around racial healing. We have Reyna Torres Mendivil, who's the Consul General of Mexico in Chicago. I had the privilege and the honor of joining them in a really powerful engagement around a Black and Brown dialogue. And that was over a few days of conversation. And we have Commissioner Erin Harkey from the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, who I am so happy to be a partner with here in the city in all of this work. So thank you, everyone. So first up, I would just want to give you all an opportunity to just say a few words about how this healing framework, when you look at that healing framework, what kind of connects to you? What stands out the most to you, especially given some of the work that you do? And maybe if we can start off with Dilla.
Hey, well, thank you again. Very honored to be a part of this panel. I had an amazing time building out this long-lasting project, if you will. What sticks out to me the most, it's almost a bad thing, but if you look at it longer, it's a good thing. How resistant people are to listening to the rest of your conversation when race is at the top of it. You know, we're saying we want to promote racial healing, but as soon as they hear race, it's, you know, one half feels a bit like a victim, the other half may feel a bit like a bully. And if you push past that and get them to keep listening, all around, all involved sees that that's not the point. The point really is progression. The point really is to use the things that unite us to drive us forward. At the end of the day, we pretty much all want the same things. And as it relates to Chicago, we want Chicago to continue to be the best city it can be. So that was always, even at some of the places we went to shoot some of the videos and just some of the conversations I have online, like it's always it shows that the work is needed, right? Because you have to initially push toward that. But I've seen it done a number of times, and I'm very happy to be a part of that push, just pushing people past that comfort zone.
Thanks, Dilla. Consul Reyna, if you want to share with us what pillar speaks kind of the most to you, but in particular, we had this really great experience of hosting this multi-day I just joined in a lot of ways. Y'all did all the work, but I was just amazed by this beautiful conversation that you all were able to put together, really between the Mexican, but really sort of the Latinx community and the Black community here in Chicago. So if you just want to share the work you did there, but also when you think about this framework, what connects the most with you?
Thank you so much, Candace. And actually it was our privilege to have you there in this dialogue. It was great. If you remember, the name of the event was Black and Brown Dialogue in Chicago, a call to rethink of future. So because of that, I think I identify with the third pillar, reimagining our future. I think we cannot get there without the other two pillars that are extremely important. I mean, we have to go through that process to be able to think about the future. What I see in our community, in the Mexican community and the Latinx community, is that we need to overcome a lot of prejudices, you know, a lot of things that we've been carrying from our own history and the history of our community here in the US and here in the Midwest and in Chicago. So in order for us to reimagine that future, and that future from a different standpoint, not the traditional one, the one that we've been, you know, passing through generations, we need to reconcile with our own history, the history that we left back in Mexico, because there, you know, we need, as I said a lot of times, in the last couple of years after the murder of Mr. George Floyd and all that came after that, the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement, that's an opportunity for us to put a mirror in front of us as well and see what's, you know, what we have not been doing, what we need to do. And as part of that is this dialogue between our two communities. I think it's a very important part of our healing process. And that will take us, you know, the element that will trigger this fire, you know, among our two communities, this need for us to talk and discuss our common issues is the hope for the future, you know, the possibility of all of us to do better in the future.
Yeah. It's funny when I think about the experience that I had with you all with the Black and Brown dialogues, and I think about the experience that I had with Dilla. We were literally driving around the city. It's funny, some days I was like, this still counts as work, because we were driving around the city and Dilla was telling me stories about all of these things in our city, and I was like, this is amazing. But I think one thing that when I think about both of those experiences together that connects to me is like this reflecting on history and just the power that it can activate in folks, right? Counselor Reyna, when I was sitting in the Black and Brown dialogue, I remember, and I forget the speaker, but he was talking about how the Great Migration, how there was a part of it that went into Mexico, right? And we never actually talk about that history, right? And I was sitting there, you know, I'm like, I'm fairly educated. I kind of, you know a lot, go to a lot of like sessions and learnings, and I've never really actually heard anyone talk about that or teach about that. And I'd love to see something like that happen. And so I don't know if you guys want to say any more, but I'm just reflecting on the power to activate that I think learning about history can do, right? And the way, especially when you see yourself in that history, what that can motivate you to do moving forward. But I don't know if either one of you want to add any more there.
I'll just say, I guess, from my kind of perspective, that's so incredibly integral, I guess, to the work that we do as a department. You know, this past couple of years have been really challenging for the arts and culture sector. But I think, you know, the prospect of, you know, creativity in hard moments, and also, you know, the prospect of getting back to creativity gives us all a lot of, you know, hope, I think, for better, you know, times ahead. And I'm really encouraged, I guess, by the kind of investment that we're making as a city in arts and culture, and the way that we're thinking about arts and culture as a vehicle, not just for like production or performance, but as a real tool to help facilitate, you know, broader social and community objectives, especially, right, around the work that you just referenced in terms of how we activate and how we build and how we support healing and growth and prosperity in our communities. And I think so much of the work that artists do is always in investigating, especially in community settings, really starts with that history, right? That learning. And so much creativity comes from that investigation of place, of people, of things that have happened. And the way that artists, I think, can take that information and then translate that information into new, right? Into possibility. Is a really beautiful process. And I think it's something that we all, you know, can take something from, no matter how we're, you know, what challenge we're looking at in terms of this ability to really internalize, right? Internalize both pain and struggle and hope and aspiration, and come out the other end with something, you know, beautiful and really positive. So I just really, I think, grateful to be in this space, even though it's a challenging time. I'm grateful to be in this space at this time, because I also see that there is so much possibility, right, in this moment.
Mm-hmm. I think the pandemic offered a bit of a stillness sometimes as it relates to art and culture that the city really benefited from. As we were driving around making history videos, sometimes like murals, I'm particularly thinking about Argyle Street. Sometimes the murals there were what would be our feature when we shot, but that mural will be painted on the side of somebody's restaurant. And, you know, at first they see us pull up, they might be a little off-putting, but the second they got a chance to talk about the art that was on their store, the chance they got to talk about the cuisine that they make, the very chance they got to just give us history lessons on the spaces that they've been in, they became a lot more inviting. You know, some of those places I've been back to just to either eat or view again or take pictures of. I took my kids up on Argyle Street, like, man, I can't believe I haven't done this already, right? So it's through art and culture that offers exploration of our city. And that exploration ultimately will be what unites us. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with, we all are kind of, especially here in Chicago, in our own islands as it relates to our neighborhoods. But that doesn't mean that our neighborhoods can't be cohesive and work together with each other while maintaining that sense of cultural identity. And I saw that on full display whenever we ask somebody about the culture and aesthetics of their neighborhoods, that pride beamed out, and it seemed like it could slice through whatever tension might have previously been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember this very vividly. It was funny when we would pull up. So city vehicle pulls up in front of your establishment, the first reaction is like, why are y'all here? What y'all want? Like, what's going on? But then when we explain the project, I mean, to everything you said, people would just light up. Oh, let me show you this. Have you gone over there? Make sure you don't forget X, Y, and Z. When is it coming out? I want to share. So I think that's so right. The power of art and of history. And I also think about like its ability to like reclaim that present moment. I think about how Erin, when you were talking, like some of the work DKs I know supported around having artists like help the public messaging around COVID, right? We're trying to put out all of these posters and flyers, and people are building like really powerful murals that are both like say so much more than any one poster did, or how artists and storytellers are really convening around the monuments and memorial work to help us kind of build a path forward. But Jose, it looked like you were about to say something, so I want to give you.
Yeah, no, I was about to say that I think we cannot lose sight of the fact that we're seeing, as recently as last week, how young people are reclaiming this moment, right? We all know that our city and our country is in this tremendous need for us to be able to make change. We all feel it in our bodies, right? Every day we wake up, and when we need to do the things that we need to do, we know that our city and our country is in crisis. We know that our city is designed to wage violence against Black, Brown, and Indigenous people. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why young people have been out on the streets, because they still do not see a future for themselves in the city. And they see that through many of decisions that decision makers are making, that they are expendable and disposable, and they're refusing to fall into that. So I think one of the lessons that I've learned doing this work is that if we do not provide a way for people to really relate with each other based on that shared humanity, so we could shift power. If power doesn't shift, and we do not dismantle the things that are causing harm right now, not only are we going to lose this opportunity for healing, but we need to make sure that healing requires consequences and accountability from people who make these decisions. So I think that that's something that we also cannot gloss over, because healing is about accountability and repair. And we've been seeing it so clearly to us that young people demand that, and we need to create the space and the process for that power to shift so that could happen.
And Jose, I want to come back to you, but I see Reyna wants to get in here, but I want to come back to you to share a little bit more about some of the I think the really powerful work you're building through TRHT. But Reyna, if you want to go.
Just a very quick comment about art and culture as tools to heal. One of the big lessons that we got from this event that we hosted in November, and by the way, you can check the videos, the whole event is in YouTube, just put Black and Brown Chicago, Black and Brown Dialogue Chicago. As I was going to say, art and culture are a very safe space for us to meet, and and feel comfortable. And I honestly believe that art and culture are antidotes to fear. That environment that Jose just described, in which everybody is looking for some hope, that those divisions that have been, emphasized in recent years can only be healed by sitting together, and what motivates us to be in the same space is music. We had a beautiful concert by an ensemble, a jazz ensemble, with African-American musicians and Mexican musicians. I mean, you cannot say anything negative about that. I mean, you feel comfortable there. We had a gastronomic event. We sit, we feel comfortable around food and sharing our histories. So everything ties together when we talk about art and culture. It's a way to start, to sit and gather around literature and public art and music and gastronomy. But that's also destination, because that's exactly what we want. We want those spaces to create those spaces for us to be together and to heal. So I think that's one, precisely what Erin was saying, what José and Dilla were saying, art and culture are enormous tools for healing, and precisely it's starting to construct that destination that we're looking forward to.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and in reflecting on all of your comments, I think, it's just, it's so rich, and it just makes you super excited about the year ahead. But I'm also really excited about some work that my brother José Rico is going to do here through TRHT. I feel like a lot of folks have gotten to know TRHT for the support they've done around racial healing circles and solidarity circles, which I will say is really amazing to see the scale of how many people you all have activated. I was able to join the National Day of Racial Healing event you guys did yesterday. And when you kind of reported on the numbers, I think it was like 15,000 in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I was just, I'm just overjoyed about that scale. But what I also love is that, again, to this point, this work is not about a particular initiative or a very specific strategy. It's about transformation, and you guys have kind of entered another chapter in that work. If you want to share a little bit about
it. I mean, and thank you for that, Candace. I mean, I think what we have learned is, again, because of how deep the segregation runs in our city, people are really wanting to be able to be connected with others in different parts of the city and just share stories and be able to connect and build some relationships. And what we've seen is that out of those relationships, there have been some actual commitments to be able to be in solidarity with each other. Another thing that we have learned is that within the organizations that want to do this work, we know that there are a lot of organizations out there that had created racial equity statements, that have been trying to transform themselves and try to do something different within their organizations, whether they're a nonprofit, an arts organization, or what have you, but they did not have a roadmap or a framework to be able to actually transform themselves as an organization, especially during this time where you had to confront the way in which racist policies and practices permeate almost every aspect of our lives. And so what we have done, we have an incredible team of people that created the Truth, Healing, and Equity Fellowship, which we had a great number of organizations that raised their hand, be courageous to say, we want to take our organization through this process of being able to see each other, not through our title or position, but as humans really trying to do this work, identify the things that we need to dismantle in our organization, which I think that's also important. We need to identify the things that cause harm and then design what are ways in which not only can our organization be a safe place, but also be a place of transformation to make these organizations places where Black, brown, and white folks could come together and explicitly develop a culture of anti-racism and accountability, but also how that could carry itself out in the communities that they serve. So we have 5 organizations that decided that they wanted to do this: the Carol Robertson Center, the Gads Hill Center, Marwin, the Court Theater, and Metropolitan Family Services. And they are the inaugural cohort that are taking this big, bold step now in this moment in time, because that's what it requires. So it requires all of us to be big and bold in this moment in time, because we can't go back to, I want to congratulate them because they recognize they can't go back and work in how it was the before times. They really want to be able to change their practices and hopefully create enough institutions in our city to directly confront the segregation and the violence that people experience every day.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm so excited to see how that work progresses. And quite frankly, I'm excited to learn from you all. As I think about all of this work, I mean, this work is ambitious, right? I'm not shy about that. A lot of times people are like, Candace, what are you trying to do over here? And what I find is that this work actually grows as we open it up and bring more folks in. I can even see from some of the questions in the chat, which I want to get to in just a second here, like how folks are already beginning to push us to make sure that we are thinking about full inclusion and thinking about other ways. I both see that as a challenge to the work, right? There's so much that needs to be done, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to say, actually, I'd love to bring you in to help us think about that, right? I'd love to learn a little bit more. So I very much personally think about this as a learning journey for myself and for our office as we take on this work. We're going to do some things great, and we're going to learn some lessons along the way. All of that is a part of the journey. So one of the things I want to do as we close out is set an intention for the year. And I'm going to invite all of you to help us do that. I don't know about y'all, but every year I actually do a vision board. I find it a really sort of helpful way for me to process both the year and what I want to do ahead. But if you can help us set an intention for this year of 2022, can you give us a word or a phrase that we should carry forward with us as we do this work? And anyone can go in whatever order.
I would say kindness, because, I think this work is incredibly hard, and, there is a lot at stake. But even in these difficult conversations, I think about the work that we've done through the, Chicago Monuments Project. And I've been in a lot of conversations where people have said really off the wall things. But even acting in that moment out of some kindness in my heart, to, meet the situation and the challenge ahead with some dignity for myself, that I think that's all really important. I get kind of overwhelmed sometimes in this work by the kind of the negativity that sometimes leads. But this work, to me, like for me personally, really needs to operate from a point of kindness and love. So that would be my word.
I guess that's
I
a
just
great
want to
one.
note real quick, I love what's going on in the chat, how the audience is just activated and they're throwing out intentions. Yes. So if you, audience, definitely drop a word of intention for us. I love it. Thank you.
I was going to say patience, right? So some of the things that we're dealing with were placed systemically and systematically over the course of decades. You probably are not going to be able to fix that in 6 months, 8 months, 18 months. And so when faced with that, we lose patience with the progress, right? We just need to, one kind of often think about that saying, right? They say a wise man plants a tree that he won't sit under that shade. And I think that's kind of like what we need to do in racial healing. Like a lot of the stuff that happened, quite frankly, a lot of us wasn't born when some of these neighborhood boundaries were set in stone, when racial covenants were a thing. We wasn't around for that, but we need to be around to set the process to heal those things. You can't really get upset if it doesn't happen in a fiscal year, right? You got to still keep that work going. So again, I would say patience.
If I may, I would say listening and transforming. That would be my 2 words. I think that's what we need. We need to be able to, gathering from all that have been said, to be kind, to open our, minds and souls to what the other has to say. So that's why I think for dialogue, it's important to listen and to transform, to aim at change. What we don't like, what we have been saying for many years, all those misperceptions, all those inequalities. So aiming at transforming, that would be my 2 words.
Yeah, since this is Chicago, I'm going to put out this concept that I've been promoting, is wanting to tap into being a spiritual gangster. And the reason why that is that I think what we've learned is that being able to protect ourselves and being able to be in a place where we're respected and that our dignity is never in question, and that we don't need to go into any space to prove our worthiness and our dignity, that's the mindset and that's the approach that we need to take. And the gangster part comes in, I grew up on the streets, and when you have people that might look different than you, might not come from the same experience, but they share your values, share the sense of community, that will have your back, we call it, whether it's Ubuntu, All My Relations, and Lakesh, these are people that are going to have your back based on shared values, that understand that your wellness is not going to be dependent on the loss of somebody else's wellness. And so I want to ride with folks that understand that they're not going to get over on me, and that we're going to do this in partnership, and that we're going to ride and die together. So I am really promoting this concept of being a spiritual gangster.
I love it. I love it. My word is, and Erin, did you went already, right? Yeah, kindness. My word would be courage. I think this work can be scary at times. We can be stepping out into the unknown. I think I speak for myself in particular. Trying to do something like this from city government at a time that is deeply imperfect can sometimes put you in a place of paralysis. I can't do this because this isn't right. I can't do this because that hasn't been fixed yet. And I think, I have learned, and I want to hold it out, that this work takes courage. It takes the putting yourself out there, putting the work out there, and trusting that we as a community will hold it and make it what it needs to be and push one another. And I think if we're rooted in all of these intentions that folks have been sharing, then I think something powerful can really be created out of it. So I certainly want to thank all the panelists so much. I want to thank everyone for joining. There are a few questions that I will try to get to. I know some folks are going to be cycling off, but I'm going to try to, hit some of the questions real quick right here at the end. But just a huge thank you to everyone. Chicago.gov/Together We Heal, where you can stay updated. We'll also be emailing out some stuff through the registration. So as long as we have your email, you'll be able to get it. But I look forward to it. I look forward to the partnership. I look forward to the journey. I look forward to the lessons learned. So thank you, everyone, so much. And I'm going to stay on just a little bit longer and try to answer some of the questions. But if folks have to head out, you all have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so a couple of the questions that I could try to get to real quickly. Some folks have asked about, have churches, places of worship be considered for locations of healing circles? Certainly the faith community has been activated, and I think can be activated. So we definitely want to think about faith as a part of our partners in this work, both for the physical space that they can hold, but also the community and the principles that it can help with. I'm not going to get to all the questions, I'll be honest. I'm just trying to get to some of the quick ones, but I can try to follow up via email for some of the longer ones. I see one from David about economic change and wealth building. Would love to share some of the wealth building work that we're trying to do, and make sure we can kind of spend a little bit of time, but you're absolutely right. There are bigger systems that we have to talk about, whether it's education, economics, that really need to be thought about in our work. Some of the projects that we named, we know that they don't include everyone, right? We just picked some that we thought we could move with this year in particular, but the hope is that it inspires some of the work that is ongoing throughout the institution. And then this question around making sure around the inclusion of AAPI voices. So I do know we use the term Black and Brown a lot. And so I'd actually be interested in having a bigger conversation about like what language makes sure that it speaks to our AAPI community, because the intention is not to be exclusive. But sometimes these shorthanded ways we talk about communities of color, BIPOC communities, can still sort of have an aspect of sort of cut off. We definitely have been building the AAPI into our work. Some of it you'll see in the We Built Chicago project, but there's so much more, and I'm open to also learning about additional language that we can building and being more intentional there. I will pause there with some of the questions, but definitely folks can feel free to email the Together We Heal at cityofchicago.org. with more questions, and look forward to working alongside all of you as we move forward in this work. But thank you, everyone.